Welcome to the IREL podcast. Are you sick and tired of real estate gurus pitching their next pre-construction deal only to find out years later they were completely wrong? Worried the next overseas conference you spend thousands to attend will only be used to sell overpriced lots in deserted developments? Join thousands of other international real estate seekers who are looking for their place in paradise without the sales pitch. Straight from your host, Taylor White.
Hey, real estate seeker. Welcome to the Overseas Property Insider Podcast. I'm your host, Taylor White. I am proud to say this episode is brought to your earbuds, courtesy of my friends at VRBO. If you're a homeowner or property manager and want to reach up to 18 million targeted travelers each month and earn incredible returns of up to $63,000 per year, then you must check out VRBO. With solutions starting at zero upfront or traveler fees or small flat ongoing fees, they have developed solutions for everyone. Head on over to irelpodcast.com/VRBO for more details. We hear from an absolute vacation rental insider today when I sit down and speak with Andrew McConnell from VacationFutures, and we are getting knee-deep in vacation rental industry trends. Andrew and I will cover such things as the explosive growth and popularity of the industry as a whole, specific strategies and tactics to compete with some of the industry's biggest players, increased competition leading to new and innovative business models, and much more. Instead of telling you more, let's join Andrew from VacationFutures headquarters. Andrew, what's going on, buddy? It's Taylor White. I'm excited to have you on the podcast straight from VacationFutures headquarters so we can get to know you personally. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Well, my background, me and my co-founder actually went to college together. I was a swimmer. He was a baseball player, but we got to know each other through the same final club that we were members of. And after college, we kind of parted ways. He went into real estate for a while, and I went to law school both in the U.S. and in the U.K., did a joint degree. But then after that, even though I did the bar exam, decided not to practice law and went into management consulting. So I worked with McKinsey & Company in Atlanta as well as in Europe and Asia, and was there for 4 years before I moved to a company called Axiom, which is a new concept law firm, essentially. I worked there for a couple of years until I started VacationFutures with my co-founder, Mickey Croft.
Love it, Andrew. I had no idea that you're so intelligent, but I know that you're doing a lot of great things. You're co-founder and CEO of VacationFutures. I know that you're a thought leader in bulk vacation rentals. Can you break that down on exactly what that is?
Absolutely. Right now, the vacation rental space is incredibly crowded with options for retail booking. You have companies that you know, that most people know of, like HomeAway and VRBO, or Airbnb, or Flipkey, or HouseTrip, and there really are thousands of them. But what they do is they require the owner of that property to deal with all of the churn, all of the complexity, all of the difficulties of booking a night or a week at a time throughout the year.
Right.
We come at that problem in a different way, where we let the person who owns that vacation home, who may only be able to get there 5 or 10 weeks a year, to take all of the time, all of the weeks they're not using themselves, and create a single listing. And then instead of putting it on a retail market, they put it in our wholesale marketplace, where professional vacation rental management companies bid against each other to buy that entire block of weeks. So what this does for the homeowner is it gives them guaranteed income without any hassle or time commitment to managing the property themselves. Essentially, someone is paying them to take care of their property when they're not there. And the managers do this because the best way for them to grow their business is to have more properties to manage. So by buying these weeks wholesale, they are then able to distribute and rent them out retail, and they make their margin that way. So everybody wins.
So, Andrew, this is a great concept. I haven't heard too much about it lately, especially. Can you talk a little bit more about who your direct competition is?
Honestly, there's not direct competition. The competition on the homeowner side would be they could either decide not to rent out their home at all today.
Right.
They could decide to do it themselves, in which case there are many options out there. The ones I just spoke about, the HomeAways, the VRBOs, the Airbnbs, or they could go with a traditional property management company. And those would tell them, look, we're not going to guarantee you how much you're going to make or how many weeks we will rent out, but we will promise you without a shadow of a doubt that we will take 30 to 40% of every dollar that we earn out of your pocket. And so they have alternatives, but there's not really a direct competition. There is no other marketplace that allows homeowners to have managers just compete and bid against each other that gives them the highest possible price with the least amount of work possible.
So, Andrew, I couldn't wait to have you on the call to talk more about vacation rental trends that you are seeing in the industry. So why don't we kind of delve deeper into the popularity and growth of the industry itself?
Yeah, absolutely. It's an incredibly exciting time in the industry. In the last 10 years alone, you've seen it double in size. And not only was that kind of a one-off, it's just a big burst, but it's actually accelerating. Travel growth is projected to outpace GDP growth for the next decade at least.
Wow.
And vacation rentals growth is even outpacing that. It's outpacing hotel growth. You're seeing TripAdvisor just published recent results of their survey. For the first time, more than half of U.S. travelers say they plan to stay in a vacation home. It was only a few years ago that less than 20% would even consider it. They always wanted to go with hotels. And you're actually seeing a huge change in that. I don't know if Taylor, if you've seen this, but even Warren Buffett, for the investor meeting for Berkshire Hathaway in Omaha, was telling his shareholders to stay in Airbnb apartments.
Really?
That's how high profile this is getting. And it's led to not only the growth in the vacation rentals, but actually it's impacting home sales. Vacation home sales last year grew 30%. 3-0.
Huge numbers.
Yeah, and they now account for over 10% of all U.S. home sales. It's crazy how quickly and how much this industry is growing.
So, of course, with this growth, you get big players, and it's led to consolidation within the industry. Can you talk a little bit more about that from your own perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. It's probably not a week goes by, if you're following the rental space in particular, but travel, that you don't see either HomeAway or TripAdvisor do a new acquisition. I mean, HomeAway just announced that they have over $700 million set aside to do even more acquisitions. They closed out the year with a $200 million acquisition down in Australia and have just picked up the pace since then, buying software companies and other rental listing sites. And it's no longer just players within the industry that are trying to roll up the space. RealPage at the end of last year actually bought the company Booked. RealPage is a public company, real estate focused company, not in the vacation rental space before this transaction, that saw the opportunity and said, wow, we want to get into that. We want to get involved with that. We want to be exposed to that kind of growth. And all of this has led to kind of astronomical valuations for some of the startup companies in the space. Airbnb's last round was at a $10 billion, that's with a B, valuation. It's crazy large players in the space right at this point.
They're huge. And I actually had Senior Vice President of HomeAway, John Gray, on the show a couple of months ago. So I know that he was coming up from a great perspective. And I believe they own something I don't know. I'm sure that you know much more than I do about this, Andrew. Something around 16 or 18 companies. And they are just going worldwide and gobbling up all the little players, which of course then leads to complaints about the big boys. Can you talk some more about the complaints that are against the big boys and then how you can or we can flip that and use that as a positive?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing that in this day and age, it's a lot easier for not only to complain, but to have your complaint heard more loudly with Yahoo groups, with LinkedIn groups, with all the different channels on the web that allow you to do that. And so you'll see, it's funny you bring up HomeAway. Carl Shepard, the co-founder and chief strategy officer there, he'll get involved in these group discussions when people are bashing HomeAway and say, look, I really think you people are getting things wrong here. This is what we're doing. You're misrepresenting how we're working in this space. And at some level, it's similar to how revolutions don't happen in countries when everyone's downtrodden and poor. It's when you get a vibrant middle class and people start getting a taste for what things could be that you get revolts. And I think you're seeing a little bit of that in the vacation rental space against some of these bigger companies. 10 years ago, vacation homeowners and renters didn't know what they didn't have. They didn't know what they were missing. But now as they're getting a little more, now as these companies are offering them more robust, more complex, and cheaper offerings than ever they had the option for before, they only are demanding more and complaining about what they just got that they never had before. And so it's a really interesting time to see that interplay between these big companies that are trying to grow, and the only way for them to do so is to be responsive to customer needs, but also the customers wanting more than these companies can sometimes or are sometimes willing to offer.
And then, Andrew, I would even say that it's not so much the customers that are complaining, it's other businesses. And why don't I give you an example? One would be like we see HomeAway, we see VRBO, we see Airbnb, just like you were talking about. And it's not the clients that are mad at them, it's other businesses like hotels. And it's something comparable to what Uber's going through when they are trying to go into new locations and the taxi representatives are trying to keep them out. So it seems like it's not so much the customers, it's other businesses.
That is an absolutely fantastic point you make, and a great parallel with the Uber and Lyft issues that they're facing against the taxi lobby. I think probably most of the listeners are aware of the fight between Airbnb and the city of New York.
Right.
What a lot of people might not be aware of is that Michael Bloomberg, after Sandy, got on television and thanked Airbnb for their efforts in finding people homes that had lost their home during Sandy. He was standing in front of the press conference saying, Airbnb, you really helped us through this. And it's very interesting to see the city turn on them. The other interesting thing is the law that they're supposedly enforcing in New York, what they're cracking down against Airbnb with. It's not some ancient old right in New York. The law was put in place in 2011 as a result of the hotel lobby getting scared of Airbnb and getting that law changed. It was totally legal to do what Airbnb was doing and what homeowners wanted and what vacationers and renters wanted before that. And so you're getting this responsive result from these companies, these vested interests that see the world changing before their eyes. And rather than being responsive to what consumers and what the public wants, they're going into the courts and they're going into the legislatures and sending in their lobbyists to try to get the rules changed to keep out innovation and to keep out these new players. And it's really too bad. Even Florida, that a huge, huge portion of Florida's economy is dependent on vacationers and vacation rentals in particular. And they've had some of the most permissive vacation rental laws in the country for a very good reason, because that's where a lot of money comes from. And recently, even they had a law in front of their state legislature trying to crack down more on it. Fortunately, it did not pass. Fortunately, they saw the light and realized we would be shooting ourselves in the foot if we did this. But it's a pretty uncertain time on that regulatory front.
Yeah, it seems to me that there is a need that's being filled. Before, you had homeowners or property managers who would rent out properties per 6 months or per 12 months, or you had hotels where you could rent it out per night. Vacation rentals now, not everybody wants a hotel room. That's overpriced. Some people want to cook at home. They want to live at home. They want to stay in a place for a week that's like a house away from their house. So it seems like to me there is a specific void. People were being creative and filling this void.
That's absolutely right. I don't know if the hotel company would be happy if I use their name, but I was talking to the strategy group of a top 5 global hotel chain. And they said, look, we can't offer what people want with a hotel.
Right.
Our target demographic for this particular chain are families with children. And every time someone books, they want connecting rooms or rooms next to each other. Well over 80% of the time they show up, we don't have the rooms next to each other. And then there's this whole debate of who's staying with the children, who sleeps in which room, how do we get between these two? What if the kids cry in the night? How do we get down the hall? If for the same price as 2 hotel rooms, you can get a 3 or 4 bedroom house that you're all under one roof, that you have your own kitchen, you have a full refrigerator, you're not getting charged $20 a day for internet, you have your own private pool, who wouldn't say yes to that? And it's interesting. It's not just vacationers. It's not just families. That's what everybody thought initially. But Concur, the big travel company Concur, just put out a report that the fastest growing sector is vacation rentals for business travelers. They went from virtually 0 bookings per year for vacation rentals last year to the 1 quarter alone they had over $1 million in it. It's as you say, it's just filling a need that no one was addressing.
So then put on your thinking cap into the future a little bit more in the days, weeks, and months ahead. Actually, very recently, I had Heather Bear on, who I'm sure that you're familiar with,
Yes.
and she was talking more, which you touched on just a little bit, about the increased regulation that's going to be coming down. So they're filling a void. Other companies, industries don't want them to fill the void. So then there's going to be regulation that's coming down the pipe, whether it's stateside. I know it's also in places like Medellin, Colombia, where essentially you kind of have to follow certain rules or regulations to be able to rent out things as a homeowner or property manager. So why don't you talk maybe a little bit more about what you think is going to happen with increased regulation?
Absolutely. It may have been Yogi Berra said it's difficult to make predictions, especially about the future. So I want to be a little hesitant in how much I say here and
Right.
what I say. But I think for the most part, it's going to be more reasonable than most people realize. HomeAway has actually done a fantastic job. They hired a guy, Matt Curtis, to head their government relations group. And then you have organizations like the Short-Term Advocacy Center, Advocacy Center, that's started by HomeAway and Airbnb together, but also anybody else can come in and use that as a forum and a set of resources to help them with these issues. And what you're going to see is there will be some regulation, and it is going to limit maybe some of the flexibility that some of these homeowners have. But as long as people work together, then everybody's needs can be addressed pretty adequately. I think the biggest thing from a city's perspective, there are kind of 2 things. One, make sure that the taxes are being collected. It's not really fair to the hotels that they have to pay a tax if people renting out kind of under the same premises in a house aren't paying those taxes. The issue is Airbnb's asked to do that and said, I will do that in New York. And then the hotels came back and said, wait, even though that's what we were complaining about, we don't want you to do that because we want to delegitimize what you're doing. So it kind of forced their hand to prove that that's not what they were concerned about. They don't want consumers to have this option at all. The other piece, and this is where hotel companies are making a lot of noise now, is around safety. And I think you're going to have a lot more difficulty in mandating all sorts of rules and regulations on what people have to put into their private homes. And that's where you're going to have this tension of, is it a private home or are you running it like a hotel? And if you're running it like a hotel, what kind of ADA access do you need? What kind of carbon monoxide testers do you need? What kind of safety first aid kits do you need? And I think that's a much more uncertain area at this point, is how that's going to shake out.
And I think the fact of the matter is, too, it's going to be hard, very hard for any government or city or state to implement these rules anyways. So I think with all this competition, it's really going to lead to professionalism in the industry. It's going to be up to people, homeowners, property managers to be professional, to run a good ship so they can win out some of the vacation rental share. What do you think about that thought process?
Absolutely. The homeowners, from their perspective, it's very difficult to do this. Even HomeAway, by their own numbers, state that homeowners spend on average over 8.5 hours every single week managing these properties.
Right.
And what you probably know is if you can afford a second home, your time's worth something. You had a full-time job that's paying you enough that you were able to afford a second home. And that's taking a lot of your mind share. So not only is your time worth something and you're wasting your time doing this, but you're probably not going to be as good at it as someone who can spend their full time doing this, which is where this professionalism comes in. Because you don't want to try to do everything right and then find yourself on the wrong side of the law. What does that mean? Where the professionalism then comes in is I draw a parallel a little bit to what happened with eBay. That if you looked at eBay in its early days, it was a soccer mom selling a Beanie Baby to another soccer mom. And what it led to and what it is today, the vast majority of transactions come from power sellers. People who looked at that platform and said, I'm actually incredibly good at this. I could build a business on this. And you're seeing the exact same thing happen today in vacation rentals on the backbones, on the platforms of HomeAway, of VRBO, of Airbnb. You're getting companies like Stay Alfred, MyVRHost, AirEnvy that are building as new model professional rental management companies, but built from scratch, built for the new internet age, without all of the overheads, without all the, in many ways, backward nature of a lot of the current property management companies. And they're coming in at new and they're coming in at fresh with financial backgrounds, hotel backgrounds, experience from other industries, and really bringing a level of sophistication and professionalism that benefits not only the homeowners, not only the vacationers, but the cities in which these places operate as well.
So, Andrew, I know that you're very much a thought leader in this space. I know that there's a lot of new businesses cropping up, some that we've already talked about, Airbnb, VRBO, HomeAway. Why don't you talk about some of the brand new businesses, such as your own, that are cropping up to fill this void?
Yeah, if you look 20 years ago in the vacation rental space, there was really only one option for a homeowner who wanted to make money by renting out their property. Because they weren't physically there, they had to use a property management company. And the property management company was typically someone who inherited their business or they wanted to live at the beach or in the mountains, and this was kind of easy income. They collect a commission, they didn't have to take much risk. People just came through the door. With the internet, things really changed. And you had companies, as you already mentioned, like Airbnb and HomeAway that came in and said, wait, we can start disintermediating some of these managers. And you've gone from managers having that 100% market share down to 40% today. But what that has led to is with those homeowners taking all of that, they've been really frustrated with, wow, this is actually a lot more difficult and a lot more work than I realized. But I also know I don't want to go back to the old way that things worked. So what other options are there to me? And so that's where companies like mine, like VacationFutures, come in, and we came in with fresh pair of eyes into the industry. How we got started, I did not know vacation rentals. I was sitting down at lunch with a couple of family friends who had vacation homes who just started talking about VRBO, vacation rent by owner, and how it was so great because they didn't have to pay vacation rental managers any more commissions. They got to do this themselves. And I said, well, that sounds great. How do you know it's not going to be a bunch of high school kids that are going to trash your home? He said, oh, well, I have to research them on the internet, see if they're on LinkedIn, see if they're as old as they say they are. And I said, well, okay, you live in Atlanta, your condo's down in Florida. How do you get it cleaned every time these people come in and out? He said, well, actually, we have to hire a company locally to do this, and I've had to switch them twice because things had been going missing, and I had to make some renters. And we just kept going through everything they had to do. And I said, this seems like it takes a lot of your time. And I said, yeah, I haven't been able to play golf in months. This is now what I do with my nights and weekends. And I said, but you're a cardiologist. Your time's worth $500 an hour. And he said, he was offended. He said, absolutely not. My time is worth $1,000 an hour. And I said, this is even more crazy.
He said, exactly.
Ahead by doing this. And I'm guessing you're not very good at it. And he said, oh, absolutely not. You know, I'm only doing this part-time. There are these management companies that do it for a living. I said, that's crazy. Why wouldn't you just sell all your weeks to these people that do it for a living? They want to manage properties. Why not just sell the rental weeks to them? And these two guys, one who had a place in Vermont, another in Florida, said, well, of course, if there was a way to do that, that's absolutely what we would be doing. And I researched the space, and no one was doing this. Everyone kind of was doing incremental improvements off the old way of working. And what you're seeing is totally new companies, totally new ways of working are moving in, like Vacation Futures, like Stay Alfred, like Air Envy, saying, let's take a new approach that provides a better experience and a better option for everyone in the space.
So, Andrew, it sounds like your company is kind of like what Costco did to supermarkets. Instead of buying things one by one, Costco said, why don't we get things in bulk and sell them in bulk? Does it kind of sound like your company, instead of doing one-off things through Airbnb or through HomeAway, you are dealing in bulk?
Exactly. We deal in bulk. The difference, I would say, is Costco did it, but the trade-off there was you had to give up convenience. You had to go in and buy these huge things, and they were typically a little further outside of town, and you'd go once a month and do it. We actually don't just provide more money with bulk, but it's also hugely convenient. You create a single listing on one site. It's a single transaction instead of 50 throughout the year, and you're just getting guaranteed checks in the mail from professional rental companies. It really ticks all the boxes that a homeowner could want. Security. I have a professional manager who's going to vet every single renter that comes through the door because they're on the hook for any repairs or damage. I know I can cover my mortgage and my taxes because I know exactly what I'm going to receive throughout the year, and each month I'm going to get that check in the mail. And I know that when I show up at my home, I'm not going to have to deal with fixing the hot water heater or the HVAC or any flooding issues, because I have a professional management company who's going to take care of it and have it clean. So when I show up, I can actually be on vacation in my vacation home as opposed to having to work once I get there.
So, Andrew, I want to try and wrap this up with a very pretty bow on it. I want to buy a vacation home. What factors should I consider moving forward?
If you are looking to cover some or all of your costs for that vacation home by renting it out, then you really need to do your research on what it can be expected to bring in. The problem is you're going to have a real estate agent who a lot of times is trying to sell it at the highest possible price, who's going to overinflate how much you can expect on a rental. You're going to have vacation rental management companies that may be partnered with that real estate agent, who again are going to overinflate the numbers so that they can get your business. But none of those numbers are going to be guaranteed. I would really want to investigate what is the guarantee I can get for the 40 weeks I'm not going to use or the 45 weeks I'm not going to use. And what's that going to bring me in over the course of the year? And what are my true costs? Not just my mortgage, not just my property taxes, but what's the maintenance each year? What's my water bill? What's my electricity bill? What's the cable? What's the internet? What's the phone? And really run your numbers before you determine this is a great investment, or I'm going to make a ton of money doing this, or I'm even going to be able to cover my costs. We deal with a lot of homeowners who bought in 2006 and 2007, and under no scenarios, guaranteed or not guaranteed, can they come close to covering their costs because they bought their properties at too high of a price. So having seen these people and seeing the trouble that some of them are getting into, I'd really, really urge anyone considering to make a move into this area to run their numbers and be rigorous on that before making such a big decision.
Andrew, extremely sharp. And do you have any final, very quick tips or pointers that you might want to share with anyone listening?
I mean, I'm more than happy to serve as a resource for people who have any questions. They can reach me at my email is andrew.mcconnell@vacationfutures.com, or follow us at Twitter at VacationFutures, or hit our website, vacationfutures.com. But in terms of additional tidbits of advice or information, I mean, I think most of it was there in terms of looking at the house. Once you have the house, I think it is a separate set of conditions and issues you need to look at, depending on what is the best option for you. You know, there's some homeowners that they plan to retire in this home, and they don't care that much about how much money they make renting it. If they can get a little extra income, that helps, but that's not the big deciding factor. And as a result, they really want to micromanage who stays in that home. In those scenarios, your absolute best option is to do it yourself. You don't want to outsource that to someone else because their incentives aren't going to be 100% aligned. In another scenario, You may just say, I want to build a relationship in this community because I want to move down and have some friends. Then maybe going with a local manager makes more sense because they have that local presence. And you're fine taking a little hit by doing a commission and taking the uncertain income. What we honestly have found in most cases, though, is that you as the homeowner should not be the one who takes on the risk that it will or will not run out. You can't diversify your risk. You have a single home. Offload all of that risk to the manager. Get your guarantee. Use your vacation home for vacationing, not for a job. If I can say anything to homeowners, if you want a true vacation home, you don't want to run it as a business. You want to be able to actually vacation there.
Andrew, why don't we leave it there? You're extremely intelligent, very, very sharp. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope that you can give us an update on the industry in about 3 or 6 months.
That would be great, Taylor. I appreciate it.
Wow. I want to thank Andrew once again for coming on the show and breaking down the industry trends that he is seeing firsthand in the bulk vacation rental market. You can head on over to our site for complete show notes, easy ways to follow Andrew, and more information about his fantastic business at VacationFutures. And don't forget, if you're a homeowner or property manager and want to maximize your rental returns while keeping your costs down, then you must check out one of the sites Andrew and I mentioned several times during our chat. The best part, you can get started completely free. Head on over to irelpodcast.com/VRBO for more details.
You have been listening to the IREL Podcast with Taylor White. Be sure to hit up IRELpodcast.com for more. That's IRELpodcast.com. Thanks for listening.